Roles, Responsibilities and Skills of a Coach by Ruben Simmons. This is part of a sports science assessment for BASVIC. Over this video, I will be going over the responsibilities of a coach. Legal obligations. Underneath the Child Protection Act in the UK, there are many laws regarding coaches and their role as safeguarders and minders of young athletes. All coaches have a duty of care for their athletes, which involves how they must treat them and the standards which must be met as far as care is concerned. Coaches have legal obligations to not give advice or to teach skills beyond their coaching qualifications, or else could face legal actions. Coaches must be prepared to have appropriate responses regarding both injury and loss, property / perhaps loss of young athletes. They must have access to first aid facilities and contact to emergency services on the site of where they are coaching. If needed, all coaches have a responsibility to make sure their vehicles are properly licensed and insured for their use of transportation, whether that be taking the athletes to training, taking the athletes to matches, or possibly taking the athletes back home after one of those two. Professional conduct. For something to be considered a profession, one must be getting paid to do the job. Coaches are expected to respect the fundamental rights, dignity and worth of their players. For example, in women's football there tends to be a lot of male coaching staff, who should not treat the athletes / players any differently based on their gender. Volunteer coaches can often take advantage of the players, as because they are not paid, they do not feel they have to hold themselves in the same regard as paid coaches, therefore perhaps treating the players with less respect. Coaches usually abide by a code of conduct. This is a set of rules of how to behave when in a club environment, usually set up by the club or by the government of the bottling country. Health and safety. Coaches are responsible for their athletes while the athletes are underneath their care, whether this be at a game, at training, or in the way between. Coaches need to know how to react to certain situations, whether that be injury, fights, etc. They must know how to use the medical equipment properly to treat the players. They must know which children they are responsible for and which people they are also responsible for. This includes their young athletes, assistant coaches, other staff, etc. They must have a keen knowledge of the sport or skill they are teaching and therefore knowing the risks of it. They must be up to date with the health and safety tests so that their gyms and equipment are safe to use. They should plan safety precautions before their training sessions, therefore setting up safe training sessions for particularly young athletes. They should check their equipment regularly to make sure no accidents happen due to faulty equipment. A risk assessment should be planned for activities. There should be appropriate on-site medical supplies for injuries and such. Club and governing bodies also have their own medical guidelines set up by the club, which the coaches must follow. Equal opportunities. Equality in sport refers to all athletes having the same rights and being equal in a sporting environment, no matter their colour, race, ethnicity, disability, etc. In certain sports, rules change based on your gender. For example, in tennis, the men have 5 sets, in women have 3 sets. Disabilities have also been adapted into certain sports and events, an amazing example of this being the Paralympics. Certain sports are stereotyped to be more suited to a specific gender, such as netball to women and rugby to men. The impact by allowing those sports to be gender dominant mean that more young people of those genders are less likely to play the sport dominated by the other sex. All players on the team should have equal opportunities to learn, not just the better players. This means that all players should get in-game minutes, allowing them to improve their own personal game. In this day and age, players are still discriminated against based on the colour of their skin. When caught, coaches can be fined / punished very, very severely for doing this.